All right, everybody. Good afternoon. We're in the middle of the combine day 3 drills right now. Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers today. But before we get to breaking that down, which I will do later today once the coverage of the combine wraps, I do want to talk a little bit about something that got announced a couple of days ago and some of the Seahawks related ramifications. Now, I made a video a couple weeks ago talking about how the NFL had indicated the 2025 salary cap would be more than anticipated. We just didn't know exactly how more. We just knew that it would be a significant pay bump versus expectations. Well, a couple days ago, we were actually given the exact number. Adam Schefter had this tweet. NFL teams were informed today that the 2025 salary cap will be $279.2 million per team. So the range that they gave us a couple weeks ago was 277 and a half to 281 and a half. So we basically landed right in the middle. A little bit more towards the lesser side, but we basically landed in the middle here. 279.2. And that represents growth that is, I think, pretty close to double the expected growth. Not quite, but it's significantly more than anticipated. And you can see how the salary cap has grown over the last 30 years, basically. Actually, I guess a little bit more. And you can see the big jump here from 255 to 279. So it's growth that is pretty close to the 2023 to 2024 growth, but it does tell you that despite all the issues the NFL may be having right now, and there are some issues, they are doing phenomenally well. And all these things that we get a little antsy about as fans, like these players getting paid as much as they do, especially quarterbacks, it's not going to stop. Like I said in the video a couple of weeks ago, the cap going up means that these players are going to want more money. So somebody like a Trey Smith might have wanted 20 million a year before. Now he probably wants 21 to 22 million a year. Somebody like a DK Metcalf, maybe before he would have taken 28, now he's only going to take 30. Maybe he wanted 30 before, now he wants 32. Who knows? Maybe Brock Purdy was going to take an extension of 55. Now he's going to want 57. Those effects exist and they kind of mitigate this. There is still certainly a positive effect, but I wanted to talk about more than just this because the salary cap number is not the only thing that we got here. There's a lot of trickle down information from the salary cap. So Tom Pelissaro had a couple of tweets. I think this was yesterday, maybe it was the day before, but basically he went over some tender amounts and some tag amounts, and also, maybe more interestingly, some 50-year option amounts. And I want to talk about that a little bit. Now, the franchise tag stuff, I don't really care about because we don't have anybody that we could potentially tag, right? Our only big time free agent right now is Ernest Jones, and the tag on a linebacker is 25.5 million. We're not tagging Ernest Jones for 25.5 million. His next contract, if it's a 2-year deal, may not be 25.5 million in totality. So that's not on the table. So we're not going to do anything here. We're not going to do anything with the transition tags either. Makes no sense, no real point. Even if you wanted to tag Ernest Jones, you're still looking at 20.9 million. You're not tagging Ernest Jones for 20.9 million. That would be an empty gesture. Nobody would actually think you're going to have him play out that deal, and it would obviously be a prelude to an extension or trade. Excuse me. So the next thing he tweeted out, though, a little more interesting, restricted free agent tenders, because we do have a little bit of this going on here, right? We have right of first refusal, which is going to be this year 3.263. So a little bit more than it was last year. So if you want to keep a guy like a Josh Joby, it's going to cost you a little bit more than you were thinking. I still think it's worth it. The compensation of the player's original draft round is also potentially on the table, but I don't think the Seahawks are really going to be that interested in doing that this year. Like Jalen Darden, nobody's going to try to steal him away from you if you sign him, especially if you tag him. So that would be 3.406. So that goes up a little bit as well. So the restricted tags are a little more interesting. But other than the right of first refusal tag, I don't think the Seahawks are going to be that involved in any of it. I think that Joby gets the right of first refusal for 3.263, and that's good. But there is one thing that kind of mixed up the conversation Seahawks-wise a little bit. So this next tweet talks about the fifth-year option numbers. If any player that was a first-round pick in 2022, and yes, that includes Charles Cross, is eligible for a fifth-year option on their rookie deal. And players really don't like the fifth-year option, which is why players are very motivated to get extended before the fifth year gets here. But as of this moment, Charles Cross has not been extended yet. Charles Cross is still on that rookie deal, so this fifth-year option may come into play. Remember, teams have to exercise the fifth-year option before the fourth year. So clubs have until May 2nd to exercise the option. So that is a couple of days after the draft. So there's plenty of time, but it's well before the season starts. Now, as you can see, how much money the fifth-year option is depends on how good the player has been. So a player that has made 2 or more Pro Bowls is entitled to this amount of money here, depending on position. By the way, we should take note of the fact of cornerback being $20.2 million, because Devin Witherspoon has already made 2 Pro Bowls, and we will have to make a decision on him next year. But I'm very confident Witherspoon gets re-signed to a long-term deal after his third year is up anyway. But it is worth noting that right now that amount for Witherspoon is 20.2. Probably going to go up a little bit next year again. But the interesting one right now would be on this next page here. Let me zoom. Okay, it's not going to let me zoom in. Let me open the image here. Okay, there we go. So players selected to run 1 Pro Bowl can get their fifth-year option a little bit lower. And then we have players that do not make the Pro Bowl but play a non-trivial number of games. So this is where things are for Charles Cross. Cross has not made a Pro Bowl. And by the way, it's not like making the Pro Bowl in the fourth year matters. This is determined entirely by the first 3 seasons. Right now, his fifth-year option is $17.6 million. So I think his cap hit this year is around $7 million. I think it's a little less than 7. And then if you picked up that fifth-year option, you'd be committing to a $17.6 million cap hit. That's actually not bad. That could easily have been far more punishing, right? Like, if Cross had made 1 Pro Bowl, and I think he had an argument for it in 2024, that amount would have been, actually, let me just scroll up here, 21.2. That's a pretty big difference, and it does put some stuff on the table that I would not have really been thinking of. What you can do now is you can put the 50-year option tag on Charles Cross, let him play out the 4th year of his deal, knowing that you're going to have a relatively reasonable 5th year on him in 2026. Now, there's also the other side of this, where Charles Cross may be more motivated to strike a deal with you now because he knows this is the tag amount and he knows what he stands to gain and lose. So it's a little bit of an interesting back and forth, right? Keep in mind that if you signed him long-term, like a 4-year deal, that first-year cap hit would not be over the top big, right? So it wouldn't be that different from this, but the benefit here is that you keep your options open, because I know, and I don't agree with it, but I know some Seahawks fans don't think Cross is that good. They don't have a lot of faith in him, and they would probably prefer to keep their options open. So this is another way to go about things. If you can't extend him, you exercise the 5th-year option, 17.6 approximately, and you just say, okay, you're playing out your 4th year. Maybe we'll extend you after your 4th year if you play really well. Now, Cross will have more negotiation leverage at that point, and he'll be able to negotiate a bigger contract, especially because the market's going to go up. But you maintain your flexibility to say, okay, what if he doesn't have a great year 4? You can go, okay, you're coming back. You're playing on year 5. It's a $17.6 million cap hit. We can deal with that. That's not so bad. And then we can just say hasta la vista if you don't improve enough. And if you do, then we're going to be paying out the nose. Then it's probably going to be like a $30 million a year plus extension, but they're willing to take that risk because maybe they don't believe in what they see quite so much. So this is interesting, right? This adds an interesting dimension to the table. I still think the move is to extend Cross now before his negotiation leverage picks up. Right now, he's probably looking at this and thinking kind of the same thing we're thinking, which is, hey, that's actually practical. That's actually something the Seahawks might do and feel pretty decent about. Like, let's say Cross had made 2 Pro Bowls, okay? If Cross had made 2 Pro Bowls, his 5th-year option would be 23.4. That would be a lot less likely to be palatable for the Seahawks to be willing to take on that cap hit in any one season for any player that isn't a quarterback. So now it's easier. Now you have more leverage. Now you can negotiate that long-term deal. Again, I think it's going to be something like 4 years, $104 million. And that first-year cap hit would be less than the 17.6 in the 5th-year option at the cost of giving him long-term security. But at the same time, I believe in Cross. I know not everyone else does. So I would be willing to do that. At the same time, though, this happened earlier yesterday. Alaric Jackson signed a 3-year, $57 million deal, $19 million a year, to go back to the Rams. And I'm sorry, Alaric Jackson is good, but this is at least, I would say, a 15% overpay, maybe 10% overpay, but it is some kind of overpay. Alaric Jackson shouldn't be getting $19 million a year. I could see 16. And I know it doesn't seem like a big difference, and maybe it's not, but it's a decent-sized difference. So this is something Charles Cross might look at and go, hey, look, Alaric Jackson got $19 million a year, so I'm bumping my expectations. Before I would have been fine with 26 a year, now I want 28 million a year. So if he decides to go that route, maybe reverting back to this option is a good idea. 17.6 on a 5th-year option, and you keep your options open after 2026. So a lot of stuff to think about for sure. I think this may have thrown a little bit of a monkey wrench into negotiations. Like, I like Alaric Jackson fine, but he's relatively capped out. So the idea of Cross looking at that contract and going, wait a minute now, should I be getting, what should I get? If Alaric Jackson gets 19, well, what are we talking about with me here? And the benefit is, of course, we have club control on Cross, and the Rams had no club control on Alaric. Still, though, this doesn't make anything easier, I don't think. Let me know what you think, though. So that's the roundup. That's the stuff I wanted to get into. I was pretty committed to giving Cross an extension this offseason. I can now see a path to where it might make more sense to let it ride with the 5th year. All right. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Combine coverage coming later today.